off, and the Pirates even do it. They give games off for their superstars when they're playing good teams sometimes, just so they can get that rest in.
And they have so many superstars.
Yeah, so Josh Bell gets, I remember when Andrew McCutchen used to get games off. But anyways, yeah, I do think it's good to have those maintenance days. Ben Roethlisberger rarely ever practiced on a Wednesday, and he didn't really need it. But I think someone like James Conner needs to practice tomorrow. Tomorrow will be a good indication if he plays or not on Sunday.
That's usually the way it works with Mike Tomlin. Usually you have to play Friday, or practice Friday to play Sunday. Unless you're AB, then you don't practice all week and still expect to play on Sunday. It's a different kind of an animal.
Yeah, but Ben Roethlisberger was really the only player that I would notice if he didn't practice on a Friday that didn't mean he wouldn't play Sunday.
Right.
So, but everyone else, I think that you got to practice on Friday. So we'll see tomorrow for the Steelers, but they're really thin at running back right now. Jalen Samuels looks to be your starter on Sunday.
Anthony Chickillo back too.
They do. They got Anthony Chickillo. He was activated off that commissioner's exempt list, but that doesn't mean he's going to play, right? Do you think? What's your gut feeling on that? He can play.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he played.
Wouldn't surprise you, but he still could be disciplined in some way from the NFL for violating some kind of code of conduct. I read. Even that's what Kevin Colbert's statement said, that they're waiting potentially if the NFL does anything. So, but all the charges were dropped or dismissed, or they withdrew charges. We'll see if anything comes of it. But yeah, Anthony Chickillo could play Sunday against the Colts. Let's go out to the phone lines, and we're going to go out to Tim out in South Park. What's up, Tim?
Hey guys, I'm watching ESPN on Tuesday night, and I was watching E60, and at the bottom of the screen, how ESPN puts the ticker, I don't know if any of you guys picked this up. They said Steelers Snell Jr. Being investigated for some type of drug charge. I haven't heard anything from any Pittsburgh media people about this. Am I missing something? I rewinded 3 times, and I clearly saw that.
Tim, I saw the story on ESPN that he was pulled over and he had something with him or something. I don't really know the details of the story. I just kind of glanced over it, but I did see that the charges were dropped for whatever he was accused of. Did you see that? Did you catch that? I think it was on Wednesday.
Yeah, I saw something like that, but I don't know the details of it.
Yeah, I haven't really heard too much about it, and I don't think it didn't happen here, so that's why I think
he's not under any kind of discipline, though, is he?
No, he's not under any kind of discipline. Maybe could be, I think, but to be honest with you, it was an Ohio thing, and ESPN did have the story, but from what I saw, is the charges were dropped that he was in possession of something. But the charges were dropped. All right, thanks a lot, Tim. I appreciate it. Let's go out to Pete in Squirrel Hill. What's up, Pete?
My man, Richie. Rich, how are you tonight?
What's up, buddy? Thanks for calling.
Hey, you're welcome. Thanks for taking my call. Rich, I heard you mentioning trick-or-treat in your neighborhood is 4 to 6 on Saturday. Is that Central Park West?
No, I live out in the Churchill area.
Okay,
so,
my man. Hey, Rich, I got a question about current state of sports, and let's just talk hockey in particular. When I watch games on MSNBC, when they broadcast on the NHL Network, I know the guy's job is to hype the sport, okay, and promote it. But I got to ask you, I've been watching hockey since the late 60s. How does anybody really get excited about guys that score 35 to 40 goals a season? Rich, the record is 92 by Gretzky.
You know,
35 to 40, I mean, in well, he couldn't do that now. The counter argument to that is then it was easier to do it before he did it, but nobody did. So it's just common sense to me.
Pete, don't you think the game changed a little bit or a lot?
The only guy in the history of the game that has changed the game, Rich, is the incredible Bobby Orr. He single-handedly revolutionized hockey, Bobby Orr. But it's the name of the game, Rich. It always has come down to 2 things, the goaltender and the goal scorer. It's putting it in the net and keeping it out. That's the foundation of hockey. It will never change.
Pete, aren't the pads bigger now for the goalies? Isn't there a lot more defense and, like Mario would say, clutching and grabbing and getting away with things? I think there should be more penalties called, and maybe you would see more goal scoring.
Well,
I think there should be less pads on the goalie.
If you look at goaltending in the NHL right now, Rich, it is absolutely horrendous. They don't know how to play the angle. They flop. They drop down to the ice as soon as somebody carries the puck into the offensive zone. The greatest goaltender I've ever seen in my life was Bernie Perrant. The 2 years that the Flyers won the back-to-back comps of 74 and 75. Bernie Perrant said, drop down to the ice. There's 4 ways a goalie can make a save: with the glove, with the blocker, and each leg, kick saves. When you're down on the ice, you eliminate the kick saves and everything. Your options are only the glove and the blocker. It doesn't make any sense.
All right, thanks a lot, Pete. I don't know if you listened last night to the show, but Gene, Ron Cook said that Alex Ovechkin is the greatest goal scorer that has ever lived.
Really?
I mean, I was surprised when he said it, but you know, that goes against what Pete said there. I mean, I told Ron that I would debate him someday about it. I mean, I can think of a couple guys that I think are better goal scorers than Alex Ovechkin.
Tell me when that's going to be. I'd like to watch that show.
Yeah. See me get yelled at. No, I think, but I do think it's, I get excited maybe to watch a guy like Ovechkin, but I think Pete's right, like a 35-goal scorer. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's.
I don't know. I don't know a lot about the history of hockey, but the top goal scorers, like when you cite this Gretzky stat, Phil Esposito, guys like that, their goal totals were real outliers, I think, from the rest of the history of hockey. I think if you get a player now who can score 35 goals, that's a very good player, and always was a really good player.
Yeah, no question. That's a great player in hockey now. I think the game's changed a lot.
I think he's right about what he said about Bernie Perrant. I was in Philadelphia to see those Stanley Cups, and those are the kinds of principles that Bernie Perrant had. He was a very upright goaltender. That is correct.
But I'll tell you another thing. It's hard to get into hockey right now. At least, you know, I'm a fan of the Penguins, and I'm a fan of watching games, and I'll watch NHL tonight and go over the highlights. And but for me, this time of the year, I can't really get into hockey until maybe after football season, January. I just think the season's too long for me.
You know my policy on this one.
Yeah, I know. You don't even want to talk about it until February.
After the Super Bowl.
Oh, okay, so it would be after the first week of February.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll stand by that policy. We got to take a break. Back in a couple minutes. More of your phone calls, some of your tweets coming up next day right there.